Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Forum, a space where you will hear perspectives from global industry executives on human ingenuity and how they catalyzed it to unlock value and realize their organization's true potential. We will keep it real. We will hear what's worked well and learnings from instances where things could have worked better. I'm your host, Saquib Vali, partner at SpyderWorks and explorer. Say hi to the future, the fast-growing community highlighting the human side of ingenuity.
But like I said, Heartbeat is rooted in insight. To get more of those insights, let's hear from our panelists, because they'll be providing us with lots of insights as well. The first one up, Mike, please come on, join me on the stage. Mike is the senior partner, a managing director at CBRE, and he's got multiple regions under him. Yohannan Terrell, please. Yohannan Terrell is the CEO of Forbes Wall Street, is a creative connector and also a world-celebrated strategist. And then we've got Brent Foley. Brent is partner at Triad Architects, Triad Facility Solutions, and Triad Development Partners. But you know what? The way I've introduced all of you guys right now is a name and a title. And I know each one of you is lots more than a name and a title. So, Mike, why don't you lead us off and introduce yourself to us in how you would speak to everyone?
I was reflecting on this question on the way in today, and I think instead of the way that I would want to introduce myself, I guess the way that I would want to overhear somebody describing me would be that somebody that has created growth and opportunity for other people.
Yeah, I would say that I would want people to think of me as someone who cares about helping other people and someone who cares about creatively solving problems.
Awesome. Brad?
Somebody who doesn't know how to use a mic. Just kidding. I want people to know me as somebody who helps make other people's dreams happen.
All right. So today the entire conversation is around Heartbeat. You heard from some of the speakers before. Why don't we just go back in line and have a bit of a conversation on what's your leadership take on Heartbeat? Go ahead, Brad.
All right, start with me. So in prep, which we got the script yesterday, so I didn't have a lot of time, which is on purpose, I think.
Yes.
I thought about this question, and I thought of a specific example internally with our team. During COVID, it brought out the best and worst in people, but it also brought out a real understanding of who was a cultural fit for your company and who wasn't, right? The people that were committed to still figuring things out, the people who were leaving because of whatever answers you had to whatever the hardest situations that had to be decided. And so we had a lot of attrition during COVID, but we had a lot of people stay. So coming out of the situation, we were really faced with the idea of, well, how do we make sure that the people that stay here see a future in Triad, right? They can stay here, they can build their careers here because we want the people that fit the culture to stay. And so thinking about Heartbeat, you got to know what they want. You got to know what their wants are. You got to know what their desires are, what their dreams are. So we did a series of surveys. So I sat down with every employee across the company. No, we're not as big as CBRE, so we don't have as many. About 20 or so, and just had a series of questions, prompting questions. What are your personal dreams? What are your professional dreams? Tell me about your personal history. Tell me where you want to be in a year. Tell me where you want to be in 5 years. So I did those interviews first, and then after the interviews, I sat down with them and their direct report, and we built a career path plan for them. There was all kinds of interesting things that came out of that I didn't know about people, things they wanted to do, and we were able to align their goals with our company goals. So it was about taking their personal heartbeat, aligning with the company heartbeat as a set of
Very cool. Go ahead.
Heartbeat to me, really, when I think about Heartbeat, especially recently, I think at the core, just we're all human. And I think that we spend a lot of time separating ourselves from whether that's position, title, sex. We find so many ways. And then, even with technology is, trying to help us solve problems, also, creating more distance and things like that. I think at the end, Heartbeat to me means we all have a very short time on this planet, and during that time, we all go through a lot, life's all the time, right? But what really drives us forward as a people is that opportunity to connect with the heartbeat. What is the heartbeat of the culture? What is the heartbeat of, your country or your community? And I think that is what drives us and connects us as humans, really is that kind of collective heartbeat. Right? We all are here, but at the end of the day, no matter how we try to separate ourselves, and whether that's position or career or whatever it is, at the end of the day, we all connect at a human level, and that connection is really what drives the world forward. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what heartbeat means to me.
And the way, Brent, the way you spoke about it was alignment. The way I'm hearing it from you, Yogi, is connection.
Yes. Yes.
And so let's go with Mike and hear what Mike's got to say.
So I would say that when I can feel the heartbeat on our team is when I am seeing our teammates being like really curious and asking questions to solve problems, but then also watching them like selflessly like kind of helping each other. Our business is not a linear business. Every problem that we're solving is very different. And so like when I feel that heartbeat, I see people asking lots of questions and then just kind of leaning in to help each other come to a solution.
All right, so alignment, connection, curiosity, right? Would that be a great way to sum up how we all feel? All right, fantastic. You know what, we'll get into specific examples for each one of you, and Yogi, we'll get you to start us off. I know you are right now closely associated, you're a director on the board of the Fashion Initiative. Talk to us. Some of us are better informed about it, some of us are not. Tell us, what is the Fashion Initiative? What's its goal? What's its purpose? And how do you think that could become Columbus's heartbeat?
So the Columbus Fashion Initiative is a strategy that I created around 2019, and it was based off the fact that Columbus has built this huge economic driver, which is the fashion and retail industry. We pretty much have invented specialty retail here in this market, and but that industry was not built like other fashion cities. So when you look at LA and New York, fashion is part of the culture of the city. So people are involved in from the ground up, from kids all the way into that role. So here it's been siloed. But being someone who's come from poverty, coming from underserved communities, I knew how much, people in my community influenced fashion and how much they drove fashion, drove the trends. And what I instantly recognized is that there was a total separate disconnect. There was a disconnect between the industry here and the culture. And so, you could look at it as a problem or you could look at it as a possibility. And that's how I looked at it. I looked at it as a possibility, and I said, for all of those young individuals in this city who have some type of creative spark in them or don't even know that they have that spark because they haven't been exposed to it, here's an opportunity to do that. And so the whole initiative is about breaking down the barriers and taking the industry from the silos, bringing it down to the community, and seeing what happens when you expose more people to it and you make it part of the culture. And so over the next few years, and to make transformational change, it's a lot of components, right?
Sure.
You need a lot of things to make transformational change. There's will, there's resources, there's access, there's all of that stuff. And so while this is a long-term vision that we have, we're starting with the youth, right? We're building that culture up. We're starting with the people, but it's really all focused on the commons, and I can see that 10 years from now, really changing the face of our city to where it's not just an industry that exists here, it's an industry that thrives here. And when you think about the future of Columbus, right, we're bringing big tech into the market. We're a big logistical hub here in the market. We're 10 times cheaper than LA and New York. When you think about where fashion and retail is going, we pretty much have all of the ingredients to rise our profile as a city, but you need the culture to be there first. So that's really what it's about, building a culture, creating a pathway, and starting to really embrace who we are as a fashion city and not just having it exist here in silos because of our history around fashion, because it could die like that.
Yeah.
And it can no longer be here if we don't start to bring it down to the next generation.
So bring it down for, say, in 2024, all of us, what are one or two things that we might see that will be an orchestration of the fashion industry?
Well, I mean, we're very excited about it, but two things that we're focused on right now. One is to create a space, right? Place-based economics. We're creating a social enterprise, which is going to be called the CFA Fashion Innovation Center. We're actually going to open that up. It's going to be adjacent. It's going to be on Columbus State's CCAD's campus. We're actually purchasing the building from CCAD, and we're going to start building community in that neighborhood, right? So that we're bringing people before, during, and after college, you know, so we can start to create kind of like a sticky community where you can grow from a place and not in suburbs. So that's one, is creating a home for anyone who's dreamt of getting into the industry, someone who wants to reinvent themselves, someone who wants to just, you know, try something on the side or want to create a whole new career for themselves. You need places. So that's one. And then the other thing we're doing is we're going to start pulsing more, that heartbeat, right? We're going to start pulsing more outside of the market to let the rest of the country know this is who we are. So we're going to start doing a trade show. We have our first trade show next year, and that's going to attract the industry here to see, you know, just what Columbus is all about. A lot of people don't know that. We're the third largest fashion industry in the country, and so this is going to be happening next year. It's called DTC, which means Direct to Columbus. Kind of play on words because DTC is direct to consumer, so we're kind of flipping that and calling it DTC, Direct to Columbus.
Very cool. And you know, if I was to just reflect back on a lot of the things that we do as far as say out in the future, like you have actually thought about it from the human side first, right? And then now the rest of these blocks are coming in, so this is fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us. Brent, I mean, if I, you know, and we've had multiple conversations. You were there as a speaker last year at the Seattle Future event that happened in Columbus, and then since on we've had multiple conversations. One of the things that I see on every write-up, every website, you know, everywhere I go from a product standpoint, it's design is about people. And as I reflect that, in a lot of cases, design, you know, for the uninitiated, design is about functionality, design is about, but you started design is about people. So speak to us a bit more about how that belief is, and how does that get orchestrated in how you do your work, how your team comes together, and how could that be a potential heartbeat for even broader communities?
Sure. So alignment, staying on that theme, you know. So design thinking always starts with the problem when people start talking about design thinking, but before there's a problem, somebody comes to us with a vision, an inspiration, an idea. I want to build this school to serve these kids. I want to design this fashion space, and CCAD doesn't hire me. Whatever the vision might be, right? And they come to us. So that starts with a person. That starts with the idea. That starts with the idea of serving people in some way. So initially, just out of the gate, it starts with people. And then, you know, design thinking goes to, okay, that's the vision, that's the goal, what are the challenges, what are the things in the way to getting there, and that's where design problem solving comes into play. But a step that a lot of people skip, and I've learned a lot actually by studying service design, I know some service designers in this crowd, is talking to the people who know those challenges and problems the most, right? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the community members? Who are the people who understand intimately how those different challenges affect them? And so our first step in our process is to verify alignment. We talk about what is the big goal, what are the visions, but then it's like, what's the problem, and who are the people we need to talk to better understand that problem. And we build custom engagement processes to talk to them. But even then moving to the next third part of our piece, which is analyzing, developing solutions for those problems, at the end of the day, we got to be able to communicate it back, right? And so it still interacts with people, right? You still have to be able to talk to a person. You have to understand what you mean, those things. So harmoniously, we're trying to balance vision, stakeholders, and problem solving, but each of those requires interactions and understanding with people. So that's what we talk about when we talk about people. And if you're looking about alignment, and the idea of heartbeat being about alignment, all your heartbeats are beating the same way.
And you know, so just to keep going through this, in a lot of cases, if not done properly, it could turn into a lot of noise, right? So what is your thought in how do you, let's say if it's an EKG, how do you know that you're getting the right beats measured versus having something that goes out and it just becomes a lot of noise and you can't distill the signal from it?
I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, once you solve the problem, quote unquote, is it actually solving the problem after the fact? Is the way you know whether or not you hit the heartbeat. So there's kind of this stereotype, two types of architects in the world. There's the typical Howard Wolf Fountainhead, who's the guy who just designs for his ego and doesn't care about what the people want at all, and it's all about the aesthetics and inspiration, right? And that doesn't solve the problem. There's the other technical architect who gets in and solves the problem, and it's a very efficient, it's a very effective solution, but it doesn't inspire the people who are inside the space. So I think when you go into the space, and you hear how people are talking about the space, that's when you know you hit the heartbeat. For example, we did a elementary school for Western City Schools, and my designer who was going through and doing the back punch, which is when we're checking the contract and making sure all the things. He saw a teacher in her room, and she was on FaceTime with her mom, crying because she got to teach in that classroom. So that's when you know that the heartbeat's
Very cool. Very cool. Might be able to come to you, and there are two very different ways in which I want to have this conversation, and frankly, the people here should benefit from. One of them is exactly what you said on when you came on the podcast, which is you have a different take on diversity. Sure. Right? Specifically as it relates to return to office. Now, I know the real estate industry has a very different conversation around it. I get that, understand. And generally speaking, just to give everyone the context, the way we were having this conversation, the thought is always there are lots of people who are either from underserved communities or diverse communities, or people who are from a certain class who feel psychological safety when they're working from home. And therefore coming back into the office is something that is not necessarily going to be inclusive for them. But you had a very different take, and frankly, it was very insightful. So why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, it's kind of a deeper thought, and I will say, like, to get to where I believe the things I'd want to share with you would be. So I'm certainly coming from a place of privilege. I actually think my privileged environment was the reason that I became aware of what would happen if I was just working in my neighborhood and hanging with people that kind of look and think like me. I have the benefit of living in a really affluent community that unfortunately is not very diverse. And during COVID, what I certainly found myself is that my connections in person were really kind of limited to people that looked and kind of thought like me. And as time went on, I really thought, what would happen to me if I was just working in my house and spending most of my time in our community. And what I would expand upon that is that most of us do kind of hang around and live with people that kind of look and reflect our values. That's just the way that neighborhoods are built out. I don't want to say that everybody in this neighborhood or everybody in this room does that, but if you look at like where concentrations of people live, it's usually people that are kind of look the same, do the same thing, and kind of think the same way. And I deeply believe in the power of work. I've came up through the service industry, and I feel like there you kind of have these collisions with people of all different types of backgrounds and races and genders. And I do think that, work, be it in an office or another place, has a power to, get people to experience other people, to build those bonds, to create those relationships where you have the opportunity to learn from somebody that doesn't necessarily walk in the shoes that you're walking in every single day. So as it applies to return to office or other, I don't believe in 5 days a week. I believe in hybrid and tons of flexibility. But I do believe in intentionality in anything an employer would do around creating a policy for the work. Brent had shared a little bit about what they did, and I felt like that exposed people to different perspectives. Unfortunately, what I see is not a lot of intentionality, and I think sometimes the larger companies really struggle with creating a policy that I think actually can create isolation and thought, and isolation from other experiences and other people. So to me, one of the things I really worry about is that I think the lack of intentionality and this, I guess this ease of being able to kind of just check out and work in your house is something that's really, really weighs in my mind, because the future to me is only going to be more challenging and more complicated. And I think that for me, the relationships that I've built through work mostly and doing things in the community and the experience that I've gotten through work have allowed me to kind of have whatever success I've had now. And it's, when I think about working for a large company, I don't put any faith on the company's going to employ me tomorrow. I look at the fact that I need to have the most amount of skills and relationships. So if I get a call later today that my position's been terminated, I'm going to be able to navigate in the future. And I think that's a little bit in contrast to this idea that you can do all the things that you need to do professionally in a area of isolation, working in your own neighborhood, working in your kitchen, working all virtually.
Very insightful. And what that led me to then go on and have a further conversation is around the fact that, so, a space, and you've spoken about this, so with you, Yogi, I mean, a space is not just square feet, right? And it's funny because every time that I've had a conversation with somebody in the real estate industry, it's always about dollars per square foot, right? And somehow that's not how you thought about it. And here, go ahead and declare it for all of us. What is it that you would say if it's not dollars per square foot?
It's like dollar per potential, or like I think everything. I would say I look at it as per potential. I think most of the clients that we would deem to be employers of choice that have a really great success in retaining people and attracting really high talent look at creating great spaces. They have policies that are inclusive. They have policies that are flexible, but they also create really creative spaces that people are drawn to. I think about the space we're in right now. I think about the space that Brent talked about designing for students. I think about what Yogi said about what he wants to do for his organization. I do think space has a super important part in the platform that employers offer their people. I don't think that space is the end-all be-all in what should be offered to employees. It should be great benefits and compensation, great leaders. It should be a great remote policy. It should be all of the things. But space to me has a really important part in that. And so when we look at the employers that figure that out and they offer that into kind of the platform of benefits of coming to work for XYZ company, often they're the ones that are most successful in retaining their people and then recruiting new people.
Fantastic. We're going to get to some audience questions, but before we do that, as part of this whole Say Hi to the Future activation and the way we are doing this, there's a whole element of, like in the morning, we got spoken to by some of the speakers. Here, it's about speaking with, right? And then when you were in your games, it's about speaking amongst yourselves. So let's take a bit of a moment, and Brent, we'll get you to kick it off. Something you've heard from either Yogi or Mike, and that's interesting, and you'd want to ask them a question.
I have a couple I have to pick.
2 minutes.
I'll pick on you, Yogi. Thinking of Heartbeat and thinking about the project you're about to do on the CCA campus, but also putting in my mind, our friends, we've known each other for a while, your personal story and where you came from, when you're trying to create a new place. Placemaking is a term we often heard here. I had a lot of problems with the term placemaking because it tends to say that there wasn't already a place there, right? And so as you, somebody who came from a background in a neighborhood that probably maybe gentrified eventually, and the previous neighborhood, the previous residents may be forgotten. As you think about creating a sense of place, what are you thinking about discovering the place that's already there and incorporating it into the new place? Is that something you're considering as you're going forward?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we think that the location is really good is just because of the energy around it, and we don't want to come in and create something new in this area that is different. We want to enhance the rest of the area, right, and actually make it a part of the community. When we went to CCAD and we met some of the fashion students there, and they talked about once they graduated, they had these great facilities, right? You see this in a lot of colleges too. You go to college and you have access to like state-of-the-line equipment, all this type of tools and resources. But then once you graduate, you lose a lot of access to that. And then if you don't get hired by the retail industry, you have to either move because there is no place. So when I thought about this place, I figured, you know, this is a great asset that one can help connect to the other community colleges, right? You got Columbus State over there, you got CCAD, but also there can be an exchange there. So like, can we cross promote? Can we teach classes? You know, CCAD classes inside our spaces? Can we work on workforce development with Columbus State? So, you know, the whole, not just the intention of the space itself, but how that space helps build community in that whole area is what made us select that location.
That's great.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a question for you. When we talk about, first of all, I love this $1 per square potential. Is that what it is, or $1 per potential? You know, tell me more about that. Like, how has that come to life in some of your projects?
Yeah, I mean, so we've certainly seen it come to life in like our own office with our own design, but we've seen it with multiple clients and multiple locations, and I think it just starts with like the intentionality of really getting to know your people, like kind of like what Brent did, which is going to be my question for you. It's just understanding what your people want, and then working with them through that change, but also really understanding like what you as a business are trying to accomplish. And so, you know, that potential is realized when you're tying together, you know, the things that are important to your people, the kind of the mission of your business, and then what you're doing inside that space to try to accomplish like the company's goal. I think one of the big shifts that we saw in real estate over the last 10 years was just that companies were being, you know, I'd say leading edge companies were being, you know, really intentional with the space that they designed to help them accomplish whatever mission that would be it like logistics or office or retail space, because we look at it as space as an opportunity to help somebody accomplish an outcome. So intentionality is probably the most important thing, because everybody has a different business, different industry, different location. And that's the part that, like, I see where, I guess it's easier to probably say where I see a miss than I see where it's successful. You know, one of the things that we probably have been most surprised and disappointed by, and we talked about this the other day, was that so many clients or large tenants are like, well, you know, let's say they're in the banking industry, they'll reach out to us and say like, hey, I really want to know what XYZ technology company is doing. I want to use that as my plan for coming back to the office, or that's my plan that I'm going to design my space. And we're like, well, are you a technology company? They're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, then why are you doing what they did? We're like, well, it looks really flashy and cool, and it's won lots of awards. I think, you know, it is disappointing at times that like companies don't want to do that deep dive that like Brent did, really kind of get to know what your people do. But I think some of that, you know, COVID has certainly changed that, where they really have to, one, kind of get really very real with their data, really real with their people, if they're going to want to accomplish their goals, and then make real estate part of that.
Thanks. We're going to open it up, just taking a time check. Anybody here in the audience has a question for the panelists? Please. There's a runner who's coming with a mic.
So thinking ahead to the future, since that's the subject, how do you think we should be preparing students? I teach at Otterbein and formerly Ohio State. How should we be preparing students to be successful in the future? So much change, lack of connection, all the things that you guys talked about. What do we need to do to prepare them to be successful in the future?
I want to hand the mic to Kim Gaddis and Dan Garrett to answer that question, because they know the answer, but maybe I'll speak to something they're doing. So design thinking, design solving is a skill that is applicable across the board. Yogi serves on an advisory board for an organization I'm involved with, where we are doing camps to teach kids architecture and design, with the goal of leading more kids to architecture and design, diversifying our field, but also knowing any student that goes to those camps gets the value of learning about creative problem solving. So I think we just need to, my suggestion is more of, the sales has a design program that they've incorporated in their program I was speaking of, whether or not those kids become designers, they learn how to solve problems, and that's what we need for students. We need to know how to not just, what Ken say, there is no box. Get out of the non-existent box, right, and just open your eyes and be able to look at things differently. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I also think, I agree with you. I think that not just technical skills anymore. I think, power skills. I think life experience, like I said, design thinking. I think what I hear from a lot of students is, yes, I learned this thing, or I'm educated, right? But do I really know how to navigate life? Do I really know how to navigate challenges? And I think that we could do more by pouring into them personally than we do just through taking tests and remembering, code or whatever that is. But I think we could see more shift going into pouring into students as humans and helping them prepare for really what life is really about.
So I had the benefit of being on OSU's campus yesterday, and it was really energizing. Because we walked through a couple classrooms, and the students were like solving problems together, and it was just like an energy that I had been around in a long time. So I would just say two things. I think first, this idea of lifelong learning. I don't think that most people will have the same career that they went to school with, and I think that's probably all of us now, but I think it's going to change even faster in the future. So really probably instilling in students it's okay to have multiple careers and multiple shifts. And then again, I come back to the importance of relationships. The thing that I participated in yesterday with OSU's like Hub of Real Estate was really all about the students building relationships with other business leaders and being able to kind of get real life examples. And I just come back to, I think relationships have been so paramount in my life, and I think that would be the thing I would try to really instill, is like constantly go out and build relationships, because it provides a really nice safety net for them whenever that change happens.
Yeah, so the thread that's going around is, let's stop teaching kids on being right, let's get them how to be prepared, right? And then it's funny, it's not just multiple careers over one's life, it's multiple careers at the same time, right? It's funny how people are, so this has been great. Any other question? We could probably go two more.
So, Brent, I was really struck with the strategy that you used with your employees, talking with them, understanding them, and then relating that back to your strategy. I thought that was really clever, and then aligning their goals. How do all of you address, you're talking about human skills here, and one of the human skills is emotional maturity and vulnerability. How do you account for the vulnerability of potentially being wrong in this society?
I mean, I'm like always wrong. So, I mean, I would just say that, look, we were certainly not perfect where we work, but we have this idea that you're just trying, you're creating, you're throwing things against the wall. But it's definitely being accountable for when things don't go right, and then you're just starting it over again. But I try to lead with vulnerability. I think that does kind of waterfall down to other people. I think it waterfalls into the people that we hire, and that becomes a greater opportunity to build a more vulnerable culture. But look, I think in today's world, with all the problems that we're facing, both in business and outside, we're going to be constantly trying to come up with all different solutions, and we're going to be wrong often. But we have to have the ability to go up and try again. So, yeah.
I have two answers. One is very tactical, and one is more global. The tactical one is, and we talked about this in our interview, one of the things we did at our company is we try to operationalize our values. So each of our core values afterwards is a series of imperative sentences is what it means to do that, right? So what does it mean to be authentic? And one of the things we say is be vulnerable and allow space for others to be vulnerable. And so then when we do our quarterly reviews of people, we don't just review them on their technical capabilities. We say, are you meeting the bar for these values? Because this is the fit for the company. And if you want to be here, this is the way we want to all operate. So what I would try to do in those situations is give examples for them of when they have or haven't done that, so that I'm encouraging the proper behavior, or the behavior we want to encourage for the company. The second piece, whether it be Dale Carnegie, Simon Sinek, Franklin Covey, whoever you want to go back to, they all talk about modeling the behavior you want to see. I think it was, what's his name? Can't remember his name. Black gentleman, poet from the Baldwin said, I can't get the quote right, but you can yell at kids and tell kids what to do, but if you watch kids, what they will do is do what you do, right? So modeling behavior that you, and I got that quote wrong, but that's the basic gist of it. Modeling the behavior you want to see. If you want to show that it's wrong, it's okay to make mistakes openly and publicly with your team so that they can see it, and then they get confidence in you and in the team, that you show them how you can fix it and move forward in different ways.
Yeah, and I will just add to that, because you hit on by showing by example. We work with a lot of youth in our program for the summer, and we were just talking about this in our group session. It was funded by My Brother's Keeper, so it was for all boys, and we kind of studied what happened through this transition. But in the beginning, the young men, they really loved it because it gave them a safe space to be vulnerable. And in that moment, we were, sharing with them about, being vulnerable, to open yourself up to, really live out your full potential. And then because there were so many girls who wanted to be in the program, we were like, we can't just save all this magic just for the boys. We're getting too many calls. Girls were like, hey, I want to get into this too. And as soon as we introduced the girls into it, the posture changed of all the boys. Right? They were like, oh, crap. So because of conditioning, it was like, okay, now I got to be the strong, tough, guy, right? I got to be that man and all of these things. And they kind of lost the sense of that safe vulnerability that they had. And so as we were watching that, we started to make sure we went back to them. We started to actually add it into our teaching across the board, is that, this is still a safe space, right? And no matter if it's guys or girls, but to be vulnerable, and you really, teaching them that if you're ever going to really live your full potential, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing. And in our space too, the way we support that is because we're trying something totally new. And so we're like, by example, saying, hey, listen, we're failing all the time. And we have to be vulnerable. We have to express ourselves because we're trying to do something different, and we're not going to be able to do that if we're not vulnerable, if we're not, open to failing and open to, feeling hurt. So we're teaching by example, basically, as you said too as well.
Awesome. One last question.
More of an observation. First of all, I couldn't agree with you more. As the principal of a high school, a high school that's also a college prep, highly rigorous type of curriculum, getting kids to understand the importance of being able to allow themselves the grace to fail is so critical, because that's where growth occurs. So I think your statements are really spot on. Also, the observation that we are essentially preparing kids for careers that don't even exist now. So it's really about skill set, and it's about making sure that we are allowing kids to explore the creative element. For the longest time, in the not too recent past, the focus has been on critical thinking, focus, pounding critical thinking, and obviously very important, but there was an unnecessary dichotomy between critical and creative thought. And we're finally starting to understand that they have to coincide, they have to work together. And so that's what we're attempting to do. And one of the greatest challenges, and this is kind of not too many blessings in COVID, but there is one blessing, and that is within the field of education, we are looking outside for people to come in who can have the capacity to teach. And so we literally have been looking for a year for someone that has the ability to bring in practical experience and to teach kids in an area of design and innovation. And it's a very difficult thing to market, okay? But it's something that we're committed to, but we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Yogi. Thank you, Mike. Thank you all for all the attention. But this has been a great conversation. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
The Say Hi to the Future podcast series is produced by Sonia Romero, edited by Matt Miller, and special effects by Edward Vasquez. Please leave us your thoughts and let us know if there's a guest you want us to have a conversation with. You can find all Say Hi to the Future podcast series on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.